Hello everyone, Paul here from Garden Well, Eat Well, and welcome back. Every spring before I do anything in the garden to start preparing for the new season, I always make sure to do this one step first. And that's to walk along the beds and pick up all the rocks I can find. For some of the beds, they're everywhere. Seems really odd that they keep appearing like this, but I always get a new crop of these to collect every year. It's almost as if someone's been throwing these things all over the garden. Actually, though, a lot of this can be blamed on the weather. Now, obviously the rocks just can't appear, they're in the soil already, but any stones that are buried can slowly be brought up to the surface. And it's all because of the cold temperatures we get during the winter. Water can collect in pockets under them, and when it freezes, the ice expands and pushes them up a small bit. This freezing and thawing cycle can happen many times during the winter, and each time the rocks get nudged up a little bit more. It doesn't all happen in one season. If they're several inches down, it could take years for them to travel up. You could also be helping the rocks along whenever you work in the garden, even if you're trying to practice a no-till approach. Whenever you do any weeding or mixing compost in or cleaning up the garden at the end of the year, you could still be churning some of that soil around. But once the stones reach the surface, the snow, wind, and the rain finish the job by washing the soil off and completely exposing them. That's why I find the spring is the best time to spot them and just get them out of there. Obviously, if you see them later in the season, by all means, take the time to pick them up. You just don't want to work them back into the garden and bury them again. So, what's the big deal? Why are these even a problem? Well, there are two reasons I do this. First, they can't possibly be of any help to the plants. They're more of a hindrance. Normally, when you sow your seeds, they'll sprout and can easily push up through the soil. But when you have these stones in the way, they can keep some of those seedlings from growing through, and you may have to replant some areas. They can also be a slight nuisance when you're trying to grow root crops like radishes or carrots or potatoes. The rocks can keep them from growing properly, and you can get all sorts of interesting and contorted shapes. But the big reason I want them out is that they cause a lot of wear and tear on all my tools. Especially my stirrup hoe. That's my main weeding tool that I use almost every single day. I can start the season with a brand new blade in it, and by the end of the year it's worn way down. Certainly the regular soil can have an effect. It can be almost like a fine sandpaper on the metal. But it's these stones that I'm striking that accelerates the damage. In fact, when it finally breaks, it's always because I've hit a large rock that's just hiding below the surface. Now, depending on where you live, you could have rocks in the ground that are naturally occurring, just all part of your soil. But for me, I made a huge mistake years ago and I've been paying for it ever since. Some of my garden is on an area that was backfilled and graded by the contractor when the house was first built. When I was setting up my garden, I laid down some new topsoil and tried to work it in with a rototiller, but I went a little too deep in spots. I churned up some of that fill, including a lot of stone. I really regret doing that. Since then, though, I've been strictly no-till, but the damage was done. I'm still picking them up every season, so it's just a hard lesson learned that I hope to pass along to you. One very important issue, though, to be aware of when you walk onto your garden is that you don't want to be compressing your soil. You can damage its structure that way, and this can happen when it's too wet. That's why the best time of year to gather the stones is after the snow is melted, but while the ground is still frozen. Hopefully there'll be a stretch when the wind and sun have dried out the surface, and the stones will be loose and you can easily remove them. But if you can't do it at that time, you can still wait until the ground thaws out. It's just that it can be very mucky for a while. You definitely don't want to be walking on it when it's like this. So you need to give it plenty of time to dry out enough so it can support your weight without collapsing so easily. And once you've picked them up, don't just get rid of them. As a true green gardener, I recycle everything, even these stones. They can always be used for other purposes, especially for drainage. They're perfect for lining the bottoms of planters. Or when I have a lot, I just add them to a short gravel path I've got near the house. I did consider digging up the garden and screening out all those stones, but that's a ton of work. Even if I use this rotary screener, which is really good for processing compost, it would completely ruin the soil structure. Over the years, I've made a lot of progress with the soil, and it'd be a real shame to set the garden back again. Not to mention harming all the helpful insects and worms that are living in it. No, I'll just keep working with the problem. One of these days, I may just pick up that last stone. I hope you found this video interesting and learned something new. Thanks again for watching, and see you again soon.